this evening, and indeed the time as indicated, I would give a report to the congregation on my most recent trip. On this trip I went to Iceland, and then I went to three of the three countries here, went to Czechia, or the Czech Republic, to Austria, and to Poland. You know, I learn a lot about geography when I start one of these trips, but you know, there used to be a Czechoslovakia. Well, that is now Czechia, or the Czech Republic, and Slovakia right beside it. But the places I had an opportunity to preach or teach were Iceland, and Czechia, Austria, and Poland. And as I always do, I want to thank you for the way you help me in so many ways in these trips. I mean, the scripture reading says, "Here am I, send me," but it takes a lot of help to be sent. And you all have been an encouragement to me in so many different ways, part of which is your interest in these presentations, financial support, your prayers. Past couple of trips, I really haven't been in places that kind of alarmed me as I had in the past, but I appreciate your prayers, and especially when things begin to get difficult. First place that I went was Iceland. Iceland has intrigued me for a while, but one time going over into Europe or into that part of the world, I changed planes in Iceland, and I thought, you know, this is kind of easy. It's a good stop. I'll try to find a church here. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and not until recently did I actually make contact with some people that are there. But in going to Iceland, when I first landed there, what I found out was it's pretty cool in Iceland. Go figure. It was pretty wet. And on the part of the island where the runway was, I thought, you know, this is a fairly barren-looking place. They need to move the airport someplace else, because those who only change planes there get a distorted idea of the place. What I found out was when I got further in, it is a beautiful place. The greenery of the grass, the hillsides, the bodies of water, the mountains. And I think the cities are attractive. You know, it's not just here. Baltic states, some places in Europe. But you look at the U.S. and you see a bunch of brown and gray roofs. Look at what you see there. I think it's just beautiful where they color everything. So Iceland was indeed a very, very beautiful place. And finally had an opportunity to meet some people there. I had seen references to Iceland. I had seen Marius and Guida's name in church publications probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, and kept trying to find them. And I would get an email address, and it would be outdated. I would find somebody who'd been there. I'd try to contact him. Finally, I would, and he said, "Oh, no, you need to contact this person." I contacted that person, and they said, "No, you need to contact this person." It wasn't until January that I was able to finally to touch base with them, and they were wonderful contacts. After I got in touch, they wrote me frequently. They are very dedicated members of the Lord's church. They were, I don't know exactly the date that they were baptized, but they were baptized by somebody from Amarillo, Texas. And I think only occasionally they had people come there to visit them. There are some in the U.S. that have been in touch with them, maybe trying to teach by some electronic media. But the quote that I have here from one of their letters, "We have loved this church from that time we get knowing her." Now, they're not talking about the congregation, because where they are basically the congregation. There is one other person that meets with them sometimes, but they are talking about the Lord's church as we understand it in the Bible. Amen. They love the Lord's church, and I credit them and their good hearts. Some credit to the people who have taught them through the years, but these people are very, very dedicated people, dedicated Christians. They've lived there all their lives, and I think for generations before them. I have some interest in genealogy, but it didn't occur to me. People on that island, their families go back on that island probably for more generations than they can count. And they do have other family members that live there. None of them are Christians. I think I said, you know, when they were driving me around, showing me some places, I think I have basically almost all of the church in all of Iceland in the car with me. So what a wonderful opportunity that was to get to know them. There was one other person that at least for a while used to assemble with them to worship. He lives in a slightly different place. His name is Paul. We met at a little cafe, and I had an opportunity to meet him. And what I did was encourage them to meet together more often. I mean, it's wonderful that they have each other, the husband and the wife, but what would we miss here if we didn't have opportunities to get together with like-minded brethren? And the place that we met turned out to be interesting. The woman who seemed to be kind of taking care of the place, I don't know if she was the owner or the manager, but I don't know whether she overheard our religious discussions. But before we left there, she came up to me and wanted to give me a copy of the New Testament in the Icelandic language. And she's standing there by that sign, and I thought I'd blow it up so you can read it. And then I realized that unless you're better than I am, blowing it up makes no difference. I still can't read it. But as she explained the significance of the sign, it was about faith and hope and love. And I don't know if you remember, but one of the sermons I preach almost every chance I get is about faith, love, and hope. Faith gets us pointed in the right direction. Love gets us moving. But it is our hope that keeps us moving in difficult times. I have been blessed to preach that sermon in many places, and but I thought that was very nice. In the end, we looked at one another, the Christians and I did, and was it just coincidence that we happen to have this meeting in this particular place on this particular day? I don't know a lot of the history of Iceland. One thing kind of caught my attention. This is the Hofke House. This was where in 1986 there was a summit meeting between Reagan and Gorbachev. And I thought, well, I guess this makes sense. You're looking for a halfway place. Unless you're going to build your own island in the ocean, halfway between Russia and the U.S., maybe that's it. Maybe that's neutral ground. So, but I thought that was interesting. Iceland. Religion, this caught my attention too. This the larger church there is the newer church, and this is a blow up in the area there of the older church. What I thought was intriguing there was that the history was that one of the preachers in that church had resisted Catholicism by trying to teach Luther's doctrine, for which he was beheaded. And his grave is there on the churchyard. So, they do have somewhat of an interesting religious history. Almost every place you go, every place you drive, you see steam coming out of the ground. They pipe the steam to their cities. You talk about natural energy, they have got it. And I think the reputation for Iceland is, it's a very green country, not only in terms of the grass, it's a very green country in terms of their attitude toward natural resources. And sometimes the steam comes out of the ground with some force. It's not going to rival Old Faithful, but they have some guys that's around there too. What I really like about this couple, especially him, is they allow me to do what I like to do, and that is if I go and visit and kind of they get to know me and see me as a source of encouragement, that's not the end of it. He has continued to write me after I left. Some of the discussions I had with him or had with them were about talking in tongues, and he thought that was interesting. He asked for some more information about that, and it's continued from time to time to ask questions, and he's appreciative that there's a brother in the U.S. that's willing to take time to exchange information with him. Of the places I've been, if I could recommend one for you to go to, this might be pretty near the top of the list. Number one, it's pretty easy to go to. If you go out of New York, New Jersey, I think it's like a 6.5 hour flight, as opposed to 16.5 hour flights that sometimes we have. It's a beautiful area. There was a Holiday Inn, a good Holiday Inn that was not very far from where he lived. I tell you, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more appreciative audience, and you might make some pen pals for life if you went there. Just wonderful people. Believe that they really, really do love the Lord's church. So from Iceland, went on, and first place I flew into was Prague in the Czech Republic, and it was there that I met Josis. Last summer, when I worked in the Baltic states, preached in 2 or 3 places in the Baltic states, but not in Vilnius. But Vilnius was the place where the main airport was, at least in that area, so spent a night there before we left. And this guy who preaches in Vilnius has, I think since 2003, for several years, he was interested enough and conscientious enough that He came to the hotel. I had a chat with him. Just immediately liked him. And we spent only an hour or so together, but we began to correspond and talking to him about other places that I might go sort of in that part of the world. And it turns out at every visit that I had in that part of the world on this trip, he set up. Either he knew people there. In one case, he had some long friends of many years that lived there. In some places, he knew people there. And I think in one place, he just knew somebody that knew somebody there. But if it weren't for Eosis, I really couldn't have done the trip. Good guy. I'm looking forward to trying to figure out some other place where he can go with me. And again, that's kind of what I try to do. For those of you who have heard these reports, when I went to Abu Dhabi, I took a preacher that I had met in Nepal. When I went to Laos, I took a preacher that I had worked with in Vietnam. I try to kind of keep the connections going. And sometimes I don't go, but sometimes I'll help arrange for them to go visit one another. But in this case, I was benefited greatly by the relationship that I had with him. Prague, it's a Christian family there. Yarrow, we had an opportunity to eat together, did a little bit of sightseeing together. Later, as I'll show you, he invited me into his home, met his wife, met his kids, and I'll talk about that at the appropriate time. To me, some of those areas are just fascinating. Maybe I don't know the history, I don't understand the history, but I know old things, and I appreciate old things and appreciate the architecture. I'll show you maybe one other picture of Prague, but this was the Charles Bridge. Not the bridge over the Charles River, it's called the Charles Bridge. It has big, massive gates that block the entrance to it or to protect the entrance to it on each side. What struck me was out in the middle of the bridge, if you can read it there, the foundation stone, if you're good on your Roman numerals, foundation stone was laid in 1357. And I know it's old over there. It's been over there since Noah, I guess, that part of the world. But it just struck me looking at that. 1357, almost a century and a half before Columbus sailed the oceans blue in 1492. They were laying the cornerstone for this bridge. A lot of history, a lot of history. So I did have an opportunity to go meet the family and have lunch with Yarrow and his wife and his kids. And what a joy it is to have an entryway to go into somebody's home. I mean, you can eat in the restaurants, and you can, stay in the hotels. What a joy it was to have a chance to see a house, an apartment where they live, and what the life is really like over there. And what I've kind of learned over the years is kind of an interesting observation that I try to make, or almost a measure I try to take, is how long can you sit around somebody's table with them before some spiritual topic comes up. And I tell you, the families that I met over there, it did not take very long. Not only did we have some good food and good fellowship, but we had some good religious discussions. Prague, it's just an interesting city. I could have done a slideshow of the pictures. Two things intrigue me, maybe more than that. One is, it's the architecture, the ancient architecture. And the other thing is the streets and the people on the streets. I mean, you go out at night or during the day, and there are people around the square. There are open squares, and people are there. And I know we have people on the streets here, but I think around sunset on the streets here, you're going to get run over by people trying to get home. Now, maybe a lot of these people were tourists. I don't know. But it was just beautiful. The people were there, milling around, enjoying being with one another, and enjoying the scenery. But that was one of the things that impressed me about all three of the cities that I visited in this area, Prague and Vienna and Warsaw, is not just the massive architecture, but the open places that they had made for people to be able to get together. Well, the way we got from Prague to Vienna was we rode the train. And I've been a fan of trains a long time before we met the #1 train fan here, but especially in other countries I enjoy. In some countries, I've ridden trains in countries I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but here, very nice trains, very modern, and you can see us all decked out there. It's just sometimes it's a lot easier to take a train than it is a plane. There's just a certain complication and a certain amount of tension that comes with catching a plane. Trains just seem to be more user-friendly. But to get from Czechia, or the Czech Republic, down to Austria, and just barely into Austria there in Vienna, and it kind of took a circuitous route, but that was the train route that we took. And I took pictures as we went along on the train, and it's just interesting to see the scenery. It's interesting to see the culture there. It's interesting to see the farms, the houses, the people, the communities. And I think one of the things that you saw most frequently was this bright yellow stuff, and I think it was some seed out of which they make an oil. I tell you, it's beautiful. The whole area over there pretty much looked like this. And I did see one scene that I knew that I must include for all the ranchers here. You can see it across the bottom there. I think you could take that scene in Ohio, maybe even East Texas, huh? If you can see the cows lying around there. But we did make it to Vienna, Austria. And yeah, I know we're always showing pictures of eating, but this was on a Saturday, and I had mentioned, I guess, to Usos that, hey, usually on Saturday I'm down at the Chinese restaurant. My custom is to get my sermon done, and I go sit there, and I eat my Chinese food, and I record the sermon. And wherever we were, he said, hey, here's a Chinese restaurant. It's Saturday. You know, you can have your Chinese food. Almost as soon as we got there, the people who were our contact said, there's a family or a woman we'd like for you to visit. She has some questions. She enjoys having biblical discussions. So that was very interesting. And part of the interesting thing was we wound up taking a taxi ride across a lot of Vienna. And I know this is not too fantastic a picture, but this rather aristocratic looking building, they say, has the oldest, and part of it, has the oldest zoo in the world. I wasn't expecting that. This is the apartment building of the woman. The woman preferred not to have her picture taken, but we stayed there for 2 hours and talked to her. Evidently, she is a woman who just has a lot of questions and enjoys asking a lot of questions. And I think they sent us to her for a reason. I've got a feeling she'd been asking them a lot of questions, and they kind of thought, well, we'll give somebody else a turn. And we did go there and talk to her. And sometimes with people, it's hard to discern, are they asking questions to be challenging? Are they asking questions to sincerely learn? And for a while, I had a little trouble sorting her out, but I decided that she's just really seeking to know. And in one place, she impressed me. We started talking about the books of the Bible and when they were written. And she mentioned John A.T. Robertson's work in redating the New Testament. How many times do you have a discussion, even with good Christians here, where their level of research and their level of knowledge is such that they're familiar with a very academic work by John A.T. Robertson, redating the New Testament. So, talked for her for 2 hours. Interesting questions, very enjoyable discussion. I think she felt like by the time we left, she had indeed had some of her questions answered. Vienna, not surprisingly, it's just more and more of the beautiful, beautiful architecture, historic. I mean, we have statues and pretty buildings over here, but they just seem to have them everywhere over there. And again, I was just fascinated by the streets. People are out on the streets. They're out milling around, enjoying being with one another, and shopping. And then Sunday morning, I was only gone one Sunday, and this was the place that I preached. And it was interesting, you know, trying to make schedules for activities through somebody or through somebody who's working through somebody else. Sometimes it's kind of tricky. Maybe this is an area where I just need to learn to have more faith. But the two congregations in Vienna, and for one of those, that particular Sunday, their usual meeting place was not available. So they were going to be splitting into two congregations. And I thought, well, maybe there's my opportunity. Maybe they need a second preacher for that other congregation. But for a while, I wasn't sure where I was going to be, what I was going to be doing. In the end, the other congregation that wasn't divided that day invited in half of that other congregation. So I had a total of like about 40 people to preach to. And sometimes the places I go, that there are not that many. And just get the contrast here in Austria versus Czech Republic that we've talked about, and Poland, which we hope to talk about. There's several families here. There's a good, strong body of Christians. In the other places, as well as Iceland, it just seems like the church is down to a family or two in those major cities. So, areas that definitely could use some encouragement. But I tell you, this was unusual. This was fast. You know, those of you who are members here have heard these reports before. You know I've done this a fair number of times, going into a different place, different people, different language. But this was really different. Very friendly group, translated into German. German seemed to be the common denominator language of that particular group. But I kept hearing somebody say, well, you know, this person over here speaks this language, this person over here speaks that language. This is Bernhard, he was the one that translated it for me. That picture, as we were leaving, they just gathered together, and I just thought that was a good picture. But they kept talking about all the different languages, and finally I said, would somebody get a piece of paper and write down for me the different languages that are spoken by some people in the group? And it was 10 different languages. Now, don't misunderstand, I'm not saying anybody there spoke 10 languages, but I firmly believe, I was the only illiterate one in the room that spoke only one language. I think everybody else there spoke at least 2, probably more than that. Yusos, that came with me from Lithuania, he also spoke Russian. In fact, Russian, I think, was his first language. So he spoke Russian, Lithuanian, and English. And so here I am, the guy that speaks only one language. I think maybe my bucket list ought to be to become a 2-language person. But it was intriguing. And of course, I was preaching, and he was Bernhard was translating into German. But I kept hearing these other voices very quietly, not disturbing at all. But I could, tell there was a conversation taking place, and after a while, I could hear, if not the words, I could hear enough to determine that the conversation was in sync with my sermon. And I thought, well, somebody's translating my sermon into a different language. The third language here, Farsi. There was a non-member of the church there who was from Iran, and one of the members of the church was translating for her so she could understand my sermon. Amen. I have been translated into Farsi. But what a joy. What a joy. But I've been in a lot of places, but I don't think I've ever seen that kind of diversity, especially in the language attitude of the people. Very interesting Sunday. And it became more, or at least as interesting during the rest of the day. The preacher and his family invited me to go to lunch with them, and that meant catching one of the local trains. I don't know whether anybody there had a car. They had just lots of trains. Of course, they're experts at which one goes where at what time. And so we went to this kind of little amusement park. And as a part of it, there's just kind of this open cafeteria, and we got our food, our pizza or whatever, and sat around the little bench there. I'm over there. There's the man there, and I guess the wife's over here, and the kids. And after we ate, it seemed like maybe they went there frequently because it was also an amusement park. So I bought a few roller coaster tickets for some of the older kids and for some of the younger kids. And who would have thought? That's what we did Sunday afternoon. We played around the amusement park. And the woman just really seemed to appreciate it. I have a feeling they've been there a lot of times. They don't usually have somebody there who will buy tickets for the kids to ride. And I think she was just kind of almost in tears. Wonderful opportunities. You all just need to come along. Well, after we finished there, that day's activity, and our roller coaster, does that count as a train? Our roller coaster train. Then we rode the train on to Poland. That's how we got from Vienna to Warsaw, and again, the beautiful fields, and you can see Yusos is enjoying the ride. And yes, I did have a dining car. And although I'm not a very adventuresome eater, from time to time, if I trust somebody, I'll take their recommendations. And Yusos said, Stan, you got to buy Zurich. You got to do the Zurich. Well, what was the Zurich? I looked it up after I got back. It's a Polish rye meal soup. what they do, they take the rye flour, put it in warm water for 4 or 5 days, and then when it sours, they make soup out of it. Fortunately, I did not know all that at the time. But this was the picture on the menu, and what I got looked somewhat like it. It was really, really good. I was amazed. But anyhow, so we met with the Christians in Warsaw. This is Nicole and her son, and had a chance the next day. The husband of the family was able to take some time off, but met with them and talked with them, and it's a joy to talk to those people. This is essentially the faithful family in Warsaw, Poland. There's another that they would assemble with sometimes that kind of lived on the fringes of the town. Ford's Church, Warsaw, Poland, big city. You know, it's just kind of hanging by a thread. Well, it's a good thread. Well, let me get that, I guess, in the picture here. Because her husband is Polish. How much time does it take us sometimes if we go into a different mission field to get the church established, to get some of the locals to become Christians? Because that just gives an element of input into the community, inreach into the community. But we have that there. There is Lucas, his wife, and there's Eustace. And there's just one of the scenes out of Warsaw. Now, put this picture here to remind me. This is the picture of their unknown soldier. And in a lot of cities over there went through terrible things during the war, but evidently Poland was one of those who went through among the worst. And I'm not necessarily a real big fan of refrigerator magnets unless there's nothing else to buy, but I bought these for a reason. This is Warsaw today. Evidently during the war, it was so thoroughly and totally decimated, they really couldn't from the rubble tell which buildings were where. They wanted to rebuild it like it was, and the recourse that they had was old paintings. This is a refrigerator magnet of one of the old paintings, and this is a refrigerator magnet of the city today. And you can kind of pair up things. You can see that this tower right here is that tower there. I think this kind of a little cupola thing up here is the same as the one that's there. Picture's taken from a slightly different angle. Can you imagine Washington, D.C. so flattened from bombs that you couldn't tell where the Capitol had been? You couldn't tell where the Supreme Court had been. You weren't even sure necessarily where the Washington Monument had stood. I just can't imagine that. You talk about a resilient people. They are a resilient people. Warsaw, beautiful city today, but lots of places some of the relics just survived from before. One more Christian family we had the opportunity to meet. This was just outside of Poland. Runas and Milena, they invited us again into their home. This picture is significant. The baby's 4 days old. For a while, we weren't sure we were going to be able to go see them because we weren't sure that she was going to be in the process of having the baby during the particular day that we were there. But she had the baby. And ladies, 4 days after giving birth, she invites us into her home, under her home, and feeds us a meal. I was pretty impressed with that. Very nice family. This is I think that their second child, a daughter, and got a picture with her. And this little spot over here is for another picture. They had some other small thing in their family that I particularly became a good friend with, and that's this little hamster. I was just intrigued by the little hamster. It looked like a little bitty mouse to me. It was so small. I think what attracted me to it was it matched my beard. But I will tell you, I put that picture, or a couple of them, of the little hamster on my Facebook. I have never had so many threatening comments for a Facebook post. Don't you bring that thing back home with you. You leave that thing over there. It's not even as big as your hand. But anyhow, I thought it was cute. So I'm confident. I know several ladies here that will not agree with me. But I said before, it's interesting to see how long it takes before spiritual conversations take place. As soon as I got there, they were asking me, where have you been preaching? what have you been preaching? And I told them some of the sermons, and they were really interested in the sermon on faith and love and hope. And so, how much encouragement does it take to get a preacher to preach? Not a whole lot. So, as we had our ice cream there, or before we had the ice cream, had an opportunity to have a spiritual discussion with them. And it was joy. It was joy. And I'm thinking, they are encouraged by it too. When you come from a long ways away, they tend to appreciate that. Oh, and by the way, as is frequently the case, I contacted the World Video Bible School, and even though I contacted them late, they shipped me some material. Some of the Searching for Truth magazines, as well as a DVD, and some of their other DVDs that they had. I took it with me. I took, I think a dozen of one thing, maybe two dozen of one of the things, and a dozen of some of the other things. But I distributed some of their material in 5 different countries. 4 countries that I visited in, and since the guy who came to go with me was from Lithuania, I sent some of it home with him. So, spreading a little bit of information there. So, thank you again. Here am I sending, and probably the challenge of sending is a greater challenge than building. And you all have done that on several of these trips, and I appreciate that very much. When we think about going across the ocean to spread the gospel, you cannot help but think, are we that conscientious in spreading the gospel across town, across the street, down the hall? Everyone needs to hear the gospel, no matter what country they live in. It's the gospel for the whole world. There is no other. If there's some here tonight, if you've heard the gospel, if you've heard some explanations of it, if you've heard part of it, partly understood it, get with somebody. Get somebody to sit down with you and take time to show you some of the scriptures. But if you've heard it, if you know what it is, if you know you need to hear, you need to let that hearing change your heart in repentance. You know you need to confess Jesus as the Christ, the Son of God. We know he wants us to confess him, Matthew 10:32. If you've not been baptized, baptism is for the remission of sins, Acts 2:38. You don't have that remission until you have had that baptism. So if you need to do those things tonight, we'd be delighted to help you if you'll come forward as we stand and sing. Amen.